Thanks ever so much, Fiona. A genuine pleasure to be here again. Always lovely to support local schools. I say local, so the study buddy is actually just based a little bit further down the M5 in not so sunny Somerset at the moment. So as I said, the study buddy is an organisation that I created 4 or 5 years ago now to help predominantly parents and students to manage their time better. Being a parent first and foremost myself. And these sessions then are about how we can, as an organisation, sort of share what we've learned, project management for teens, and coupled with some cognitive science ideas to help you as students to make the most of the time that you're spending. So I'm going to share my screens, and hopefully that's going to work. And also we're going to have a bit of dramatic moving to another camera at some point. I've built that up. It's not going to be that dramatic. So learnings can feel like a bit of an oddity. So, for example, I couldn't tell you the last text message that I sent, but I do remember that a dodecahedron is a 12-faced 3D shape. And it's strange, like why one thing would stick in my head when another thing doesn't. And for you as GCSE students predominantly, although I guess we may have some A-level students amongst us, getting to the bottom of why some stuff sticks and some stuff doesn't is absolutely key. Now, I know that we've got exams coming up, and many of you either have had your mocks shortly after half term. A great deal more of you are going to have some more coming up in January. And then, of course, the real exams proper will be not long behind it. And so I can almost imagine as you're sat there watching the screen thinking, fantastic, what I need now is for someone else to tell me that revision's important. And actually that's not why I'm here. You know that it is. That's why you're here. I've not yet met a student who's actively trying to fail their exams. But what I am here, as I say, is to share with you some of the insights around managing time and some deeply practical ideas around the techniques that you might use to help you along the way. And I should say, I'm not a teacher. That's not my background. My background's from project management, working for large corporates. But I am, as I said from the outset, a dad. So I'm less judgy than the other adults that you know because I'm not your dad, but I am someone's dad. And so there will be, in all likelihood, dad jokes that run throughout that. And I apologize up front for that. So over the course of the next, I reckon, 45 to 50 minutes, these are the things that we're going to be looking at. So 3 things in particular. We're going to look at how we learn, specifically how not to forget. We're going to look at planning and the essence of a good plan and how you can gear yourself for success. And then finally, we're going to look at some revision techniques. Those sections in between will be a chance for questions. So do feel free to put those questions into the chat. Fiona is ably manning that Q&A section. And so we'll have a pause to see if there's anything that's come up. Equally, there'll be time at the end and we can have a more free-ranging chat, I'm sure, if that's what you're after. So the first thing to think about then is, how do we learn? And we learn in this sort of very rudimentary idea here in 3 stages. So we've got our sensory input. Sensory input is what's happening all around you. So at the moment, you've got what's for dinner? Did I leave my locker unlocked? Ambient temperatures, are going to rain again tomorrow. All of that, as well as some random chap telling you stuff over the internet. So this is what's going on around you, and you can't possibly retain all of that information or even take it on board. Your head would likely explode. So what you can do, though, is what your brain does do is take on 5 to 7 plus or minus a few bits of information at any one time, and we call that the working memory. For the older people amongst us, we used to call this a short-term memory, but it's been rebranded. The working memory then is the stuff that you're paying attention to. It's there. So when I joined, hopefully you were paying attention to the fact that my name is Nathan, but probably not so much that I knew the name of some obscure 12-faced shape. So these are the kinds of things that you're holding. And the fact that you can only hold 5 to 7 explains why sometimes you'll be told something, you might nod, to sort of show or intimate that you've been listening, but then it's forgotten. It's forgotten instantly because you're just not paying attention to it. And that's why it's really important in class to sort of pay as much attention as you possibly can, accepting what's happening in the world around you, because going from your working memory is the first step to retaining that information, for it to becoming a longer term memory. Your longer term, and I know that I have this weird habit of pointing to the back of my head, sort of imagining that my long term's there. I don't actually think it is, but from your working memory, notionally at the front, it goes into your long term memory. And the way that learning happens and revision happens is that we want to have easy access to that long-term memory stuff. So when your teacher's talking to you about early modern Britain under your crime and punishment section of history, for example, you're paying attention, it sits in your working memory, you're thinking about it and churning it over, it goes into your long-term memory. In the exam, you want to have easy access so that you can write down that information. In order to do that, what you need to do is rehearse, and that's revision. So a distinction then between learning, your teacher's imparting wisdom, and rehearsing and revising. And it's that bit that's key. And it explains why when you think back, you may not remember the words to a poem that you read in nursery, but you will remember the funny incident that happened on holiday one year, because every time the family gets together, you will always recount it. And that's that difference. So revision, revision, revision. As you can see there, practice makes permanent. Keep turning that over time and time again. Now, that might seem a little sort of abstract, so I'm going to prove it to you in Darren Brown style, and I'm hoping that you're paying attention enough so that this will work. And what we have here is the forgetting curve. So over time, and I'm not sure whether my mouse counter is being shown, but at the bottom here of this graph, you can see time, and at the top here, you've got the chance of you remembering something. So if I tell you something now, and I ask you to give me 5 seconds of attention while I tell you, a dodecahedron is a 12-faced 3D shape, you would be able to repeat to me that a dodecahedron is a 12-faced 3D shape. Now, chances are you probably didn't know that before, but you were able to repeat it back to me because we're at this point. I've told you, you're attending to that information. It's gone in your working memory, probably not yet in your long term, but dodecahedron, and there it is. Now, that's 100% chance of remembering. What's happening over time, of course, is that you're likely to forget that because other stuff will come about and you're not going to remember it. But of course, me telling you dodecahedron is a 12-faced shape isn't the first time you've had that information. I told you it up front, probably when you weren't paying attention. I mentioned it cheekily a little later on, and I've just told you again. So at the point that you're likely to start forgetting that a dodecahedron is a 12-shaped figure, a 12-faced figure, I should say, it's 3D, I've hit you with it again. And I've prompted you. So you've rehearsed that information and it's come back. But not content with just doing that once, I'm doing it another time. So I'm imagining you there in front of your screens, screaming, "Stop this lunacy." But I'm going to ask you, what is the name of a 12-faced 3D shape? And I'm hoping that in some kind of magical unison, you've all said a dodecahedron. So we had it the first time, a little bit of a prompt. We then had it again, and so on. And you can see that what's happening here, this forgetting curve, the first time this red line was quite steep. So we talked about it, you were likely to forget it quite quickly, and then it would be gone. So I've hit you with it again. And so you've come in with that first reminder, your blue line is now shallower. The chance of you remembering that is staying greater because of that initial prompt. And then the second time, the purple line. The third time, let's call it this one. What is the name of a 12-faced 3D shape? Of course, it's the dodecahedron, and that's becoming shallower. The fourth time would be nothing more than ridiculous. However, a dodecahedron has how many faces? 12. I know, I can picture, I can feel the love that you're all screaming and shouting one thing or another. And amongst them there are, of course, 12 faces to a dodecahedron. What's important about this that you may have noted on the screen, because of course the fact that a dodecahedron is a 12-face shape is not important on its own, is that the space between those reminders is getting longer and getting longer again. So again, sort of notionally within this replica of a famous chart, we've got a day later was our first reminder. A second reminder was then 10 days later, 30 days later for the third reminder, 60 days for the fourth reminder, and so on. And that's spacing, that's eking that out. And what this chart is telling us is not just that random people can get you to remember information you don't want, it's that cramming works. That's that first bit. If I were to spend all night cramming Inspector Gould's quotes and things that Inspector Gould said, the chances are the following day, there's a good chance I'm going to remember it. So cramming works. But this chart also shows you why you shouldn't use it. Cramming works, but it doesn't work in the long term. The test that you've got in the morning, you might be fine with. But if you have that test again, say as part of your mocks in 40 days' time, there's probably a really high chance that you will not have remembered those quotes. And certainly when it comes to the exams in July, which is something like 180 days away now, you don't stand much of a chance of remembering that. So you'll have to cram all over again. What this chart is showing us, though, is that once you've had that bit of knowledge, maybe you have crammed for a test, you then revisit and revisit and longer and longer and longer. And by doing this, you will actually spend less time trying to memorize Inspector Gould quotes than you would do if you simply crammed every time you did it. The final point, of course, to remember why cramming isn't an effective strategy for your GCSEs is that you've got anywhere between 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11 GCSEs to try to retain. That's an awful lot of information. You don't really stand much chance of being successful at cramming all of those without burnout, without seriously affecting your well-being and elevating your anxiety levels. So don't do it to yourself. A little bit and often. Little and often is absolutely the key. And as I said, you've got something like, I think it's 180, maybe 179 days to biology AQA paper 1. So you've got a good amount of time, but time is marching on for you to use it properly. So with that in mind, little and often, this might be the kind of thing that you've said to yourself in the past, yes, I'm going to revise. Come my mocks, I will revise. Or you may well have said to your parents, carers, guardians, actually, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to leave it like it as I was, and I'll see, and maybe I'll change things up. But actually, if your revision hasn't been working for you in the past, either managing time or techniques, what you need to do is try something a bit different. So this chap here, Albert Einstein, of course, famously said that insanity is doing the same thing, but expecting a different result. If you are a procrastinator, if you are the kind of person who has been trying to stick religiously or rigidly to one particular method, and it's not giving you the kinds of results that you want, or if you're the kind of person who's been thinking, I don't actually need to revise, I'll be fine, but not then getting the results that you want, now is the time to switch things up. And as I say, hopefully we'll show you some stuff that you're going to come away from here energized, reinvigorated, enthusiastic, probably nearly, and look at some other ways of doing things. Now, feels like we're off to a good start. I think we've made a good connection. I can feel the energy across the ether. At the risk of ruining it, there's one important thing that I want to get across, and then I'll go back to being sort of madly energetic and bubbly, and that is rules, parameters. So I worry that the sign of a mobile phone with a line across it, I'm going to have lost some of you in the room. But this is important, and it's important because you don't need to spend all of your time revising. But what you do want to make sure is that the time that you're spending revising is being used efficiently and effectively. Otherwise, why are you doing it? It doesn't make an awful lot of sense. And one of the things that is key, it's not the only thing, but certainly one thing that we see and hear time and time again is about the mobile phone. At home, it can be a real bone of contention. Certainly it was in my house with my children when they were revising. But the thing that I want you to remember about the phone is that there are people, user experience designers, who are paid significant sums of money to design things like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all these apps and Fortnite and other games to keep you snared in, to actually get your attention, because that's how they're making money. They're making money with social media through advertising. And it's why the algorithm in Instagram will change the feed every time you log in, because they don't want you to see the same thing twice. They want you to see something different. So given that these people are earning quite literally hundreds of thousands of pounds, it's little wonder that they're very, very good at it. And if now, in the cold light of day, when I'm not trying to wrestle it out of your hands, we can agree that actually the phone is a distraction, it might be the single biggest thing that you can do to alter your approach to revision and the time that you spend. Even having the phone on the desk upside down in night shift mode can be enough to make you think about what's going on. So I really, really would encourage you to take the time, pop the phone in the bread bin, under a pillow or somewhere else, so that you can really focus. But rules aren't just a one-way street. So it tends to be quite a parenty thing. Certainly my superpower is nagging, apparently, that we impose rules. But actually, this is also an opportunity for you to talk about what it is that you need when it comes to revision. And it might just be, when I'm revising, I just want peace and quiet. Can you make sure that my younger brother or sister is kept out of the way? It's also a really good opportunity if there's a particular meal you like, go with it. I'm not saying pitch early for gifts, jewelry and Shetland ponies and things like that, but certainly your parents are typically there to support you and want to do everything that they can. So if there is something that they can do, you can rest assured that that they will try. So that's sort of a broad overview of how learning happens, and really sort of giving ourselves the best chance of learning. And we're now going to take a section and a moment to have a look at planning and how we go about planning. So at that point, Fiona, I wonder if there are any questions in the Q&A chat at this moment.
No questions yet.
No questions. Excellent. So we'll plow ahead. So planning for brilliance. Planning is the key. You've never heard any quotes that don't talk about the importance of planning. If you plan to fail, you should. If you fail to plan, you should plan to fail. The harder I work, the luckier I get. All of these kinds of things show you that actually the time that you spend planning is well worth it. And there are some people who would argue, but why would I spend 20 minutes coming up with a plan? I might as well spend that time for actually revising. And if you are an innate planner, someone who this just comes naturally to, you know, almost supernaturally what kinds of things it is that you need to be studying, then amazing, why not? I've not yet met anyone like that, truly. So what you need to do, and what I would encourage you to do, is be really, really deliberate about the things that you're going to do, the things that you're not going to do. And that way you don't miss stuff out. As I said up front, you've got an awful lot of content in your GCSEs, so you need to make sure that you're covering them all. So how do you plan for success? And the key to this, sort of making it as successful as you can, is preparation. And preparation is also a moment of sort of honesty. What are the kinds of things that hold you up? So if you were to go into a revision session and think to yourself, what I really need to do is I need a playlist. I need to listen to my music. You've set aside an hour maybe to do some revision. You spend 20 minutes weeding out the Taylor Swift songs from a playlist that someone else has created, ready to go. Well, now you've only got 40 minutes. So be prepared. If you know that you want music when you're revising, and we can talk about the relative pros and cons of that later if you like, then get it sorted up front. For me, it would be things like making sure that my highlighter pens are there, making sure that your notes are in order. Another one, making sure that you've got all the right logins to your Seneca or GCSE pod or whichever systems it is that you use, because you want to be in that position. Once you've made that decision, what I'm going to do now is study, it's going to work. Don't let anything hold you up, because if you're anything like me, it only takes a little bit to derail, and then all of a sudden this whole plan can feel like it's spiraling out of control, which of course it isn't, but it can feel like that. So give yourself the best shot, sort out the incidentals, sharpen your pencils, sharpen every pencil in the house, so that when you know you're going to sit down, that is absolutely what you're going to do. So we've got our groundwork. We know what it is that we've got all of our distractions out of the way. Taylor Swift either is or she isn't playing on our playlist, and we're ready to go. I'm excited. I can feel you all are too. So let's have a look. When it comes to preparation, when it comes to studying and planning for our exams, what we need to do, first of all, is think about these huge things. So we've got geography or English literature, maths, science, biology. We've got big things, and sometimes this can feel really daunting. So a question to the group: how do you eat the elephant? This is a fantastic African proverb. Normally do these sessions in person, and for this I would encourage you to scream out your answers and throw chocolate at you as a way of encouraging it. Obviously I can't do that virtually. So how do you eat the elephant? You eat the elephant, of course, one bite at a time. And that's what we need to think about here. We've got huge things, subject areas, as I said, like history, geography, and it can feel daunting. It can feel like there's a mountain to climb in order to get ready for these exams. So I would encourage you to break them down into smaller bite-sized chunks. This is project management, the essence of an agile project management. You need to know exactly what it is that you've got to get done so that you can plan when you're going to do it. So a moment ago, some people actually can maybe orient themselves around, I'm going to study geography on a Monday. But if you're a procrastinator, or if you're not equally in love with all of your subjects, then that kind of thing can be an elephant trap. It can be enough to make you think, I don't know what to do. In those kinds of situations, what you might do is just revert to the thing that you sort of know anyway. So if I'd said that I'm going to study geography on a Monday, I would have, old me, obviously, would have sat down, sharpened pencils, shuffled notes, and then maybe spent some time flicking through my notes on an oxbow lake, reminding myself, of course, that I do know how an oxbow lake is formed, having read it. It starts off like that and sort of gets a bit more wiggly, and then all of a sudden it's like that. Hurrah! So 5 minutes reading through my notes. Now I've got 10 minutes of self-congratulation. I do know how an oxbow lake is formed, and I move on with my day. What that doesn't help me with, though, is people dynamics, or the population subjects, or my case studies that I need to learn. I'm avoiding the stuff that I don't know, that I don't necessarily like, in favor of the stuff that's making me feel good. And that's entirely natural. It's perfectly human. I want to feel good. I do the stuff that makes me feel good. However, if you avoid the stuff that you don't like, Spanish, for example, apologies to Spanish teachers who may be watching this amongst us. If you don't like something like that, you're likely to avoid it because the converse is true. I don't want to feel bad. But you need to. In order to be successful in the GCSEs, you need the broad spectrum to cover everything. And so what we do is take the big things, break it down into small chunks, and now all of a sudden it becomes much more manageable. Now, when we do this as part of the Study Buddy Toolkit, we look at the anatomy of a unit as being a subject at its top, the big thing, the elephant. So maths here, as you can see in the center of your screen. From there, we break it down into something that's a bit smaller. So in this particular instance, right there in the middle, number. So I've got my subject, maths, and I've got my topic, number. Underneath that, there's a smaller unit of work, but not yet detail. So I'm not in particular formula or bits of information. I've got a subtopic. And this is really where we want to play. We want to exist in this area of subtopics. In projecty language, this is a unit of work. This is it's the smallest thing that I would do in my one revision session. We can see a whole list of examples there. We've got, geography, population and settlement, population dynamics. I've got business studies. Understanding business activity is my topic. Business activity is the unit, is the subtopic. And these should relate directly to the kinds of things your teachers are teaching you. There are any number of ways that you can build these. You can build them by taking the contents pages of your textbooks. Your teachers may well be providing this kind of information for you. It will certainly be related to your exam specifications, and so you can get them. You can get them in that way. The really important thing is that you work your way through all of your subjects and break them down in this way: subject, topic, subtopic. You don't want it to be too small. This isn't revision content, this is revision planning. Similarly, you don't want it to be too big and so it feels overwhelming and that you don't know where to start. The point of working at this level is that I can sit down, I know that I'm going to be doing energy changes in a system and the ways that energy is stored as part of my science, combined science revision there, and I can just get on with it. I'm a master procrastinator. It doesn't take an awful lot to tip me over the edge. And so this kind of specific nature of what I'm going to be revising is an absolute must. If you think about the other times that you have too many choices, this is what we're working with, that we're trying to reduce the amount of in-moment decisions that you're trying to make so that you can just crack on with it. So we started off, the first thing we did was we prepared the groundwork. We got everything ready. We removed our distractions. The next thing that we've done now is create this backlog of work that we need to do, like a master to-do list, a great big checkbox. Once we've done that, what we then need to do is think about when we're going to study it. So if, like my children, you are blessed with having naggy parents, then typically what that will come down to is two basic questions. What have you got to do? When are you going to do it? Well, we've just covered the what. This is what I've got to do. When we send out our sets, it tends to be around about 250 to 260 things. So I can prove it, I can show it. This is what I've got to do. When? And the when is what we're going to be doing right now. So managing time. We all have to manage time, whether we do it actively or whether we just let it happen to us. And time can feel like a sort of a bit of an oddity with the way that it goes quickly and the way that it goes slowly. I'm going to show you now how to actually create a plan that you can work to. Now, in a dramatic twist, I'm going to move to a different camera, I think, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see this in all of its glory. I'm hoping now that what we can see is the jotter pad with times on it and my hand waving magically over it because I'm literally just sat here. I think I may have built that up as being more exciting than it was going to be. So here we are. I've got my jotter pad. I've got my timetable. You'll notice that this is a paper-based version. There are any number of ways in which you can do this, but the thing with it being paper-based or whiteboard-based is this week is not going to be like next week. And so I want to have fluidity. I want it to be adapting and adaptable to the kinds of week that I'm likely to be having. So I'm going to go with this being next week, which I think is week commencing the 20th. So get myself comfortable. I was a little bit, I don't really have the hands for this. I think you'll agree. They're not model hands. We'll go with it. I'm fairly sure I can probably find some kind of filter that I can add to it with daisies and things moving around. So 20th of November. I'm writing at an awkward angle. Please don't judge me. I promised not to judge you. Oh, that looks like a W. There we are. We can make a feature out of that sometime later. So 20th of November. Next thing I want to do is just block out my the times so that I know where it is that I'm working. So I'm going to start at 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Now, I bet you didn't think you'd be spending your evening watching some random chap write numbers in a column, but there we are. So this is next week for me. So as the first thing that I want to do as part of my planning is to block out my commitments. These are the things that I have to do. I have to go, to example, to school. I have to go to school. So I'm going to put a line through the week. Now, we can do this in any number of ways and make it look a lot prettier than I managed to here. The point is the same. I can't do any of my own studying during the school time. When you come up to your mocks, and certainly for many of you, when you come up to your final exams, actually, you probably will get a chance to have revision sessions and study periods. So you will be looking at what it is that you can do during the school day. But for now, we're just going to put that on there. So my first obligation, school. Any other obligations? Well, I may have a dentist appointment coming up. So if I've got a dentist appointment here on Thursday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to put in dentist, which I think you'll agree is a lot neater when I write that way than when I write that way. So my dentist is in there. You might have a part-time job. You might have a sports fixture. Let's put a sports fixture in. I'm going to put in a different color just for the sake of it. So what are we in at the moment? Rugby season, I think. So I'm going to give a rugby match here with school and so on. And then anything else, any other commitments that you need to do, as I say, part-time job, all of this kind of stuff. That's my first step, commitments. The next thing that I want to get blocked out is my social time for fun. Okay, and this is really, really important. It's really important for a number of very good reasons. Chief amongst them, because all of life is not here just for studying and for school or for work or for these kinds of things. It's really, really important that you look after yourself, that you get balance, that you're taking time to care for your own mental well-being and all of this stuff. It's also really important that you gear your plan to success. And if what you're doing is making this plan all about work and all about study, you're not going to want to stick to it. And if you don't stick to it, then all of this was for nothing. And you're managing this. This is all about you. So I'm going to put in some free time. Now, we saw me earlier in the screen. I'm not the kind of person that has an active social life. That's just the way things are. So I'm going to make this up. So bear with me. Now, I've been told, and if you've been lucky enough to listen to all of these jokes before, you'll know that I've been reliably told that there's a YouTube channel called Murder and Makeup. And a new episode comes out every Monday at 7. I'm going to make time to watch Murder and Makeup. It's important to me. I'm going to do it. There might be I was talking at a school in Newcastle over the last week, and was surprised, I'll admit, to find out that Fortnite is a big thing. And Fortnite, there's a competition that was going on at 6 o'clock on a Friday. So I'm going to pop in Fortnite. I'll be really honest, I've got absolutely no idea what that even really means. But these gents were very excited by the fact they could win 1,000 of something or another. So Fortnite was a big thing. Of course, as a teen, it's really important to me that I have a lion. My God-given right, I will have the lion, and so on. So look back and think about what's important. What else is there that you might want to do that you make time to? Go out with your friends. One student I was talking to wanted to leave all weekend. So he had football that he was playing at a club level during the weekend, and he wanted then to have his entire weekend to spend with his mates. Fine, do that. If you block all of that out, you know you've got to spend time during the week. Conversely, you might want to keep your weekends, your evenings free and work during the weekend. It's your time. You need to manage it properly. Our commitments and our free time. This is much more important than I've made it sound, so I'm going to put in an hour's practice session as well. So commitments, social, all are in there. Now, what that means is that these blank spaces are fair game for some revision. Now, that's not a challenge. This isn't then about filling up every space that you possibly can by putting something in back to back. That doesn't work. Challenge yourself, absolutely, but don't overdo it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a couple of things every week. Now, from your own lists, you might be handwriting this in. I have, in a Blue Peter style, got some of these little stickers that we've created for a previous GCSE student. So I'm just going to take some of these. So you'll notice here that I have, at least I hope you'll notice it. Oh, look at that. No, am I out of focus? I think I'm out of focus. So here I've got biology, homeostasis and response, hormonal coordination in humans, which I think I've made some exciting. So I'm going to put that in here Monday at 5 o'clock. And then, so that was green because it's a universal truth. Biology has to be green. I'm going to pick some chemistry here. I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to take a bit of economics, the market system, elasticity, and so on. Okay. I'm just going to pop a couple more of these in. You'll notice I'm not being particular about what it is that I'm studying in any of these points of time. The important thing is that I'm mixing it up. I'm not just focusing on one thing. I'm only going to concentrate on the things that I've already been taught. There's no point trying to revise something that hasn't been taught to me at school. We'll get some Christianity here. I'm going to take Friday off. I'm just putting in a mix. We've got to have some English language in here. And I'm going to have a bit of English literature poetry going in here. I think this must be in my GCSE Edexcel section, just to show how nerdy I really am. And that gives us a really good mix. I'm also going to make time on Sunday over a couple of hours for a past paper, and my past paper is going to be Maths Paper 1. So that's my week. I've got my obligations, the stuff that I can't get out of, dentist, school, work, football matches, rugby matches, that kind of thing. I've got the things that I want to make time for. Lying in, Murder and Makeup YouTube, Fortnite, practicing my Fortnite to give myself the best chance of winning 1,000, whatever it was that was out there. So the only last thing to put in here, and this will all be made clear, is a wrap session. And it's important, so I'm going to do it in a black Sharpie, because who doesn't love a black Sharpie and a squiggle? So wrap session. The wrap session is really, really important. This is all about looking back and thinking about how the week has gone. So it's a weekly review and plan, because I'm a middle-aged man who worked in marketing for a financial services company, and we love a good acronym. So weekly review and plan is a case of, I've set my week, how did it go? And I would take each one step by step and ask myself, how has it been? Do I need to spend more time doing it, or can I tick it off? If I can tick it off my list, amazing. If I need to spend more time, equally amazing. And it's equally amazing because I know what I need to do. I'm in control. When you first create those lists, or you get hold of them in one way or another, it can feel overwhelming because there's quite a lot. But actually, this is the first step to you being in control. So if you're a procrastinator who is like that because you don't really want to try to find out how much it is you've got to do, or if you're overzealous and anxious, this is the answer. So either end of the spectrum and everywhere in between, knowing what it is that you've got to do is absolutely the first step. If there are things in your plan that haven't gone to plan, so for example, here I've said that I'm going to do economics, the market system, elasticity after rugby, I just need to ask myself, why not? Now, if you're doing this session here with a parent or carer, which is what I would advise, the old me would have been nagging all the way through this process. But right now, I've just got one session, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max, to look back over the week. And so your parent might ask you, or you might ask yourself, why not? Why didn't I get around to elasticity? It could be a number of reasons. One, for example, I just wasn't in the mood. I've had all of this kind of stuff. Next week will be fine, in which case that's okay. Everyone has a bad day. You don't want too many of them, but everyone does have them. Alternatively, it might be, by the time I've been at school and I've got ready for rugby and I've played rugby and I've had some dinner, I'm exhausted, absolutely shattered. Well, if that's the case, what we've now learned is that next week, if we have rugby at this point, having been through our obligations of hastily school and a rugby match here, what I've learned about myself and managing time is I'm not going to do any revision either side of that. And that's important. And it's really, really important, because what I want you to do is I want you to get to smashed it every single week. I want you to look back on the week and think, what is making that successful? What is making it unsuccessful? More of the stuff that leads to success, less of the stuff that is holding you back. So let's just have a really, really quick recap when I move back to sharing my screen, I hope, with that. And I will also change my camera back to being me. So managing our time. We manage our time by blocking out our commitments, by making time for fun, meeting friends, downtime, me time, lie-ins, all of this kind of stuff, and then allocating work for study. The third thing, of course, was allocating the time for the study. We then simply followed our plan by working our way through our list. So worked around our commitments, and we did the stuff that we did, and then we reviewed. And it was that bit that then takes into account that replan. So now I'm thinking ahead to next week, all of my commitments, what has changed? I don't have the same fortnight competition, but I know that I need to practice more fortnight. So I build that in. Someone having a party, my lie-ins might get longer. All of these kinds of things, taking on board the learnings that you've had from that previous week. So that was breakneck pace through managing time. I hope that wasn't too quick. Very, very happy to run through at the end if there's time for any specific questions. But before we move on to the final section about revision techniques, Fiona, I wondered if there were any questions at this point.
Yes, there's one question, and it is, are there any tips for revision if you have poor concentration because of maths dyscalculia, for example?
So absolutely. And the thing is not to give up. So even if there's a particular subject that you don't like, or that your concentration or memory is failing, if you're trying the same thing, remember the Einstein quote, try something different. And so we'll have a look at that in a section in a second as we move through some of the slides. So that's not a very specific answer, but more generally, if there are concentration issues that you have, try mixing it up. In our planning here, you'll notice my default is to go for 1 hour and 1 revision session. Typically that would be 50 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes within any 1 hour. That gives you time to get up, have a cup of tea, if you're going to have 2 sessions together. Go and check your phone to see who's liked what, shared something new, and then get back to work. However, that may not work for you. It might be that you would need 30-minute sections to keep your work tighter so that you're not finding yourself drifting off. The really important thing is that wrap session, that feedback where you're talking to yourself, is to think about what is it that's standing in my way, what is working and what isn't working. And as I said, do more of the stuff that's working, and don't be afraid to mix it up. If you've tried something that hasn't worked, fantastic. You found one more way not to create a light bulb, mixing my metaphors or my sayings, I guess. But it's all about progress, not perfection. So keep trying something different, and don't be afraid to get it wrong.
Nathan, we've got one more question at the moment, which is, what would be the time gaps you would recommend between revisiting topics? I think this goes back to the forgetting curve a bit, but perhaps you could just say a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will come back to that. So we will look at that, and that's an idea called spacing. And there's a Leitner system which says if you get it right, you don't need to come back to it straight away. If you get it wrong, come back to it sooner. Now, I appreciate that that's not precise, because it will vary. And that forgetting curve works on the idea that when you've got a 90% chance of remembering, revisit. Now, that's completely unhelpful. There's no way of knowing whether you're at 90% chance of remembering. So for me, it's about how comfortable you feel. And the sooner you start the process, the more chance you've got of getting this right, because it will depend on you. So I would suggest that you've been at school, you've had your lessons, we've talked about, I've just got something here, what have I got? Types of materials, resistant materials in design and technology. So once you've had that lesson, if you're being driven home by a parent, or mum or dad gets home and asks you how your day has been, rather than saying, yeah, it was all right, and then leaving them to try to find out what it is that you had for lunch, actually call their bluff and tell them. And that becomes your first point of remembering. So you had the lesson, you were attending, you were listening to what was going on, it was in your working memory, gone to long-term memory. Your first point of revisiting becomes later that day. And once you've done that and you've remembered stuff, then maybe leave it a couple of days or a week. And as I say, it will depend. It will depend on your schedules. It will depend on the subject that you've got. The important thing is that you will find that rhythm just by doing it. If you don't do it, you'll never find out, obviously.
Okay, I think that's it for now for questions.
Okay.
So if we can just move into the last session. Thank you.
Excellent, of course. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to touch on some revision techniques. I'm mindful of time. Now, again, we could make this more fun, unfortunately, because of the remote nature. I'm hoping it's not going to be too dry. What I want to do, though, is get across the idea or the point that not all revision techniques are created equal. And time spent is not the same as time spent well. So let's have a look at some revision techniques and specifically things that don't work. So wishing for it. It's a bit flippant, but actually we do tend to rely on luck. I really hope that that question comes up in my exam. Well, that's a fool's errand. Why would you rely on the fact that you want some kind of divine intervention to give you the kind of question that you've revised? You're in a much better position to be the master or mistress of your own destiny and make sure that you've covered stuff. Watching videos, rereading your textbooks, or reading your notes. Now, these aren't effective revision techniques per se because they're passive. And what they do is they give us the illusion of learning. If I'm reading through my notes, what's happening is that the content that the words that I've read, the facts that I'm sort of assimilating are sitting in my working memory. They're there. So I might think I remember what they are, but in actual fact, it's working memory. It's not long-term memory. So these are fooling ourselves more often than not into thinking that we've done some more revision than we have done, or that we know stuff better than we do. Highlighting equally and making notes by copying out. All of this it's passive, it's superficial, and it's in that working memory. We're not making it hard for ourselves, and we're aiming for a level of desirable difficulty. So what does work? Well, if being passive doesn't work, what we want to do is be much more active in our learning. So we want things like distributed learning, which is spacing stuff out, and that forgetting curve. And to the excellent question that we had about at what period of time. While I can't tell you exactly what the period of time is, what I can tell you is that once you get it right, the period of time becomes longer and longer and longer. So that's why this works. Flashcards, which we're going to look at in a section in a little while. Past papers, word diagrams, blurting and mind maps. Small study groups, if you're actually studying. If your small study group is about gossiping and playing FIFA or Fortnite, then actually it's not studying, it's just to get together. And if that's an important thing, fabulous, mark it down as a social activity. Don't pretend it's something that it's not, because you're only fooling yourself. Explaining something to someone else is amazing. So if you can distill the relationship between the witches and Macbeth, and then explain that to a friend or a parent, grandparent, carer, that's tremendous. What you're doing is you're having to work out what's important and retain it enough to be able to share that with someone else. Summarizing and presse, as opposed to just making notes by copying. Again, what we're doing is we're reaching into our long-term memory. What was that thing about? And then summarizing it. Okay, so these are active. What doesn't work is the passive kind of stuff. Osmosis is great for plants and not so much for students. And what does work is active, desirable difficulty, getting things wrong. If I'm reading through my flashcards and I'm getting them all right, I'm going through the wrong flashcards. I need to be going through something that I'm actually getting incorrect. So what I want to do in the final few moments is just have a look at some specific examples of techniques, which I hope will be helpful, that you can then take away. So here we have note-taking approach. So this is the Cornell approach to note-taking. This is the simplified version. There are any number of ways in which you can do it. You don't need to buy stuff for this. It's just about the way you break down content. So here we've got what the topic is, what the date is. During the lesson, your notes go into that notes and definition section in here. Oh, is that is that a pen? Can I do a pen? Let's see. Here. Oh, unnaturally excited by that. It's the first time I've ever done that. not my first PowerPoint presentation. Glad I could share it with you. So notes section, write down the things in shorthand for what's being taught to you. As you come across an idea or a main idea, it gets jotted in here. So we might, if this was business studies, for example, we might write down in here piece rate as a keyword. Then your summarizing comes into this afterwards. So I come back to these notes and I can read through this. I can look at my keywords, maybe make flashcards from my keywords and summarize. And I'm summarizing it, but not as a direct copy and then paste. What do I remember about that session? Now, I think I've hoisted because I've now got a pen that I don't think I can not use. So that was note taking. The flashcards. Flashcards are not an excuse to write as small as you can. A flashcard should be dead simple. On one side, you've got a fact, a date, a phrase or something of that nature, formula perhaps. And then on the other side, you have the reverse. But on the reverse, sorry, obviously on the other side, you have the reverse. On the reverse, you have the answer. So here we have, in my dad jokey kind of way, what is a dodecahedron? Now, amongst the groans, I can hear you saying, of course, it's a 12-faced 3D shape. So what is a dodecahedron is on one side of the flashcard, and on the back, you would have the answer. If I've got it right, smiley face, I don't need to come back to that next week. If I got it wrong, I would need to look at it sooner. And so we're starting to space these contents out. What is important with these flashcards, and you could be creating them by hand, or you could be using something like Seneca or Quizlet or an online system, and they're amazing, is not to look at the answer before you've determined whether or not you know it. Because if I turn this over and see it and it says 12-faced 3D figure, then of course it's in my working memory and I think I know it. That's an illusion. I need to be tested on it. And oh, not entirely sure what I just did there. That was exciting. Flashcard. So we're going to use those. Spacing. And so this is the idea of the forgetting curve in practice. If I get it right, move it on to, in this case, 3 days, get it right again, a week, a month, and then 3 months. If I don't get it right, I move it back down the pile. Okay. And we've got this flow. I mean, this works so well. I mean, the dodecahedron's annoyance at a joke, but it is proving that if you keep coming back to something over time, even if you don't want to know what it is, you're going to retain it and you're going to be able to bring that back and then use it. Other ways in which you can recall information are through diagrams. So these don't have to be, they don't just have to be the flashcards. What the flashcards do is the flashcards and blurting, which is just chucking information down on a piece of paper out of your head and in an unpretty way, but just to see how much you remember. That's about your retention and your retrieval. Can I bring back this fact? The next level of revision then is, can I link disparate facts, disparate bits of information? And this is where the word diagrams or graphic organizers can come into play. So we've got flow down there in the bottom corner, which is looking at maybe your history timeline, for example. We've got inputs and outputs for cause and effect. A Venn diagram. There's any number of them, and you can Google all kinds of ways of doing it. Why this is important is because you're linking bits of information, which is, as I say, next level stuff. And here we've got just a couple of examples. So here's an example of a character map for Macbeth that I have pinched from somewhere, so we can see the relationship between Macbeth and the other characters. And would you be able to do this? Not replicate this exactly, but would you be able to use this idea to tie up the characters in spectacles, for example, or linking ideas in poetry, or geography population facts? So that's a map, mind maps. Here we've got a comparison. So we've got our eukaryotes, and we've got an animal cell, and we've got a plant cell, and we're looking at what's similar and we're looking at what's different. Drawing these things down is a really useful way of sort of doing that similarity and comparison piece. So our flashcards were about knowledge and about learning, the facts and the retention and data. The next level was linking bits, which we did through graphic organizers and word diagrams. The pinnacle of all of this is your past paper. because the past paper is what you're going, the exam paper is what you're going to be sitting. And so past papers as a revision exercise allow you to display the knowledge that you've retained, the linkages that you can make in a way that answers the question that you're being asked. Now, your teachers will be spending time doing this with you. It's undoubtedly they will be. And it's key that you get this, because this can change that dial between the difference between grade boundaries. What you want to do is understand if they say describe, you need to do this, and if they say explain, you need to do this other thing. And it will vary by paper. Your teachers, as I say, are imparting this wisdom on you or to you. The other things that are really important about past papers are it gets you used to what you can do in the time that you're allotted. So my daughter's doing A-levels. She's got a past paper that she doesn't want to do on economics, but knows that she needs to, because one of the key things for Em is that she doesn't get around to doing the 20-mark question. And so she needs to sort of get much more used to that. It also helps you to get used to the pressure. If you're someone who suffers with anxiety going into the exam hall, the more you do it, the more used to it you can become, sort of normalize that feeling as far as possible. I should also say that being confident in the fact that you know the content is a significant step to helping you to overcome those feelings of stress and pressure. And finally, of course, there's an awful lot of writing that you need to be doing in an hour's time for Spanish higher reading, or even more. And you'll be surprised how out of practice you get, certainly if during your school time you're using a device to take your notes and so on. So, a quick recap. We know more about how the memory works. We remember, of course, that we have our sensory inputs, our working memory and our long-term memory. And in order to stand the best chance during the exams, you want to retrieve and rehearse that information. And of course, we remember the forgetting curve. We will never forget that there are 12 faces on a dodecahedron. And we know that managing time is on 3 steps. Manage your commitments, build time for your fun, and then allocate study sensibly, but in a way that feels like a push, and feedback to yourself. Finally, we found out that not all revision techniques are created equal, and that using your time is not the same as using your time to its maximum efficiency. Well, I hope that you found that all useful, and thank you for your time. If there are any questions, Fiona, or anything that anyone wants to ask now, then I think we have got a couple of minutes and I'm very happy to answer.
That's great, Nathan. Thank you very much indeed. I think you very quickly mentioned there what blurting was, but someone has asked if you could just give a little bit of information about blurting and how that's helpful.
Sure. So blurting is sort of raw retrieval activity. If I think about, so here I've got a card for plastics and resistance material. My revision activity might be to think back to my lesson on plastics and literally on a piece of A4 paper, dump anything that I can think about that was relevant to plastics. What I would then do as sort of squaring that particular piece of activity is looking back on my notes. What did I miss? What were some of the properties of plastics that I was taught that I haven't written down on my paper? There's a gap in my knowledge and something I need to revisit. And then finally, is there anything that I've added that wasn't in there because I need to challenge anything that I've got wrong? So blurting is a great low, high impact, sort of low involvement activity that you can do. Low involvement in that you don't need anything for it. A sheet of paper and a few moments time.
Great, thank you for that. We've got another question saying, should parents revise with me? I mean, I'm sure there's a space for parents in this. So can you say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really tricky, and the first thing I would say is make sure your parent is coming to the parent session after this, where I'll be telling them exactly how they can go about doing that kind of thing. So yeah, I think where parents are able, and they're not always able to, then actually being involved can be really helpful. Often your parents will tell you, if there's anything I can do to help. And as I said before, call their bluff. Get them to do the flashcards with you. From your point of view, it works really well. So my daughter loved studying, I say that, well, these things are relative, but she loved studying maths, her music GCSE with me, because I would be chopping onions and making dinner with a pile of flashcards that she'd created. So I just need to read them. I read the keyword syncopation and then ask her what syncopation is. She tells me what syncopation is, asks me, do I know what syncopation is? Because of course I did the flashcards. No, no idea. I'm chopping onions. I'm not paying attention. She then laughs at me because I look stupid. She asserts her authority over her parent and she moves on with her life. As it happens, I've been through syncopation so much, I do know what it is now. But that's a great way of doing it. It doesn't have to be serious, doesn't have to be really heavy. Revision doesn't have to be this activity which is painful and you have to sit in a darkened corner and sort of laboriously going through stuff. Mix it up. And if not a parent, groups of friends, try to gamify it as much as you can without being overly competitive. You want to keep this low stakes. It's not the be all and end all. But yeah, parents can help, and parents can help in such a way that they don't need to learn the subject with you in order to find a moment to help you revise.